Welcome to our Commanders Panel series, where Senior Master Sergeant Kaiser interviews 2 full-time commanders and 1 part-time drill status guardsman commander, asking questions that were submitted by airmen at the 122nd Fighter Wing. In Part 2, the commanders discuss the art of managing people, expectations, and communication within their organizations with limited time and resources. They discuss the F-16 returning to Fort Wayne, how Agile combat employment will change future deployments, and give some advice for people who want to join the military or who might be thinking of moving on from the military. Don't miss Part 1 in this series, where the commanders discuss personal development strategies that have helped them get to where they are today. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to review and share the show.
This is the official podcast of the 122nd Fighter Wing. Views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of the 122nd Fighter Wing, Air National Guard, or United States government. No endorsement of any person or business is ever intended.
4-2 Jedi, good hit.
As leaders, how do you guys use your chiefs and first sergeants?
Every single day, all day, for everything. They're super important. I cannot be overstated how much help we get from those levels of organization, because there's just too many things to do on your own, and they also have a different perspective. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hit on it earlier, but I really do believe that when you're running a squadron, it's a 50-50 relationship with your senior enlisted leader. You know, they're just, because of the 23,000 responsibilities that you told us about earlier, you don't have the time to deep dive within the different areas and get that feedback as much as you want to spend the time really learning all the different tasks that are going on within your organizations, or, you know, getting that time with that one-on-one time with all your airmen. You're just never going to be able to get to that on a drill weekend. And so having that chief perspective is really important. You know, when I make a big decision that I know may not be popular, that's one of the things. I have several conversations, and, you know, me and the chief will hash it out, and, you know, we either agree to disagree or agree to agree, but when we leave, we have a united front in that. So I use that. I always want unfettered feedback from them, and they know that. And, you know, recently I never had a dedicated first shirt. When I was in the FSS, had Sergeant Jennings as our group, and he did awesome, but I had to share him. And now I get my own, so it's really awesome. Sergeant Wannery is at school right now, and we instituted kind of a triad leadership sync on Fridays, and I love it. You know, he can take the time on the weekends and throughout the month to get that one-on-one perspective from our airmen, getting it unfiltered. And that's what I told him. I said, I want unfiltered feedback on, you know, ways we can improve our unit, things that we could all be doing better, lots of new ideas. So that's how I use them.
Yeah, having a large squadron, you know, 238 plus or minus a couple, depending on the month, they are the eyes and ears. And especially, I appreciate you getting out. You as a first sergeant get to bring me the temperature, the morale. Like you go out, you ask the hard questions, you spend time with them. And I think every first sergeant does a really good job of this, of getting out there, asking the tough questions, and then not being afraid to bring that back to the commander. I don't know how many times in the past year of being in the MXS command that you've come back and said, hey, did you realize this, or did you know this? And it's like, no, you know, in the day-to-day, totally missed that, didn't see it. And you captured it just on a drill weekend and brought it back where it can be addressed. So the eyes and ears there with the chiefs, again, kind of what Major Shelton said, you have to share that. You know, there's 3 chiefs in MXS, and their leadership drives what we do. They always say when you become a chief, you're a wing chief, right? And I think that is really important because they can see across the boundaries of just the squadrons. I encourage NCOs and senior NCOs coming up to start to broaden their perspectives, because that is one of the qualities that makes a really good chief, being able to see beyond where you sit and to understand the impacts across the base and to be able to discuss those with your commander is very valuable, because I may miss that perspective. I may miss that thought or that impact that wasn't there.
Sure. Does anything get lost in translation when chiefs and first sergeants come to you all as commanders? Does anything get misconstrued or lost behind a closed door?
Never intentionally. I mean, it certainly happens anytime two people try and communicate. Sometimes things get lost. It's no different than having a conversation with anybody else in the world. Sometimes things get missed or the perspective wasn't understood, but having that relationship with that individual that they can come and say like, hey, you didn't get this, is important, because people need to be on that page for the mission and the people to succeed. So having that relationship is super important. It's okay to be wrong.
I'm a little biased when it comes to the 122nd. It just has my heart. And I feel like our commanders around the base have an open door policy. Do you guys specifically have an open door policy for any ranks, or really looking to get in more ranks to come and talk to you?
I definitely have an open door policy. I've always had that. I don't ever want to get away from that, because I do think that there are sometimes, like, if an airman feels like that's the only person they can come and talk to address a situation or issue, and I'm that person, then I want to be able to provide that avenue. One of the things I always ask them, though, is, have you tried to address this up through your chain of command? Because if they haven't, then maybe that is part of the issue. But a lot of times, I would say 50% of the time, if not greater, they really haven't worked it through their chain. I think sometimes our airmen, don't realize how much their chiefs are advocating for them, or even their senior NCOs. I think sometimes, I don't know if that gets lost in their communication or where that feeling comes from, but I definitely am a big fan of it. I think every commander has an open door policy, and that would be something that they would want to foster within their unit.
Yeah,
and I think, kind of to your point on the previous question about things getting lost in translation, I think that's maybe sometimes more what happens is, somebody says something, they come to you, a decision has to be made because of some other factor that's not known, and now you get this consensus that they didn't care about my opinion, or they never heard it, and it's a good opportunity for that to kind of have a check and balance. And it's very important that they communicate as well. Like Major Shelton said, I agree 100% that I've had way too many issues where people just weren't talking, and you get them in a room, sit them down, we talk to each other, and things are good. It's important to communicate, and it should be able to be done respectfully, even if you disagree.
Colonel Wagner, when he took over as the maintenance group commander, said something that really just resonated in my mind. He said, I have an open door policy unless the door's closed, because sometimes there are things that I have to do that you can't know about yet. And he was a very transparent group commander, but I had to sit back and think about that, and I don't think that the gravity of that hit me until I became a commander. So yes, I want and encourage airmen from all ranks to come and talk to me. But there are instances, and probably, as Major Bohatchee said, going back, there are times where decisions are made or decisions can't be made because there isn't enough information. And coming from the enlisted ranks, I remember that frustration of like, hey, why aren't we moving forward on this? Why aren't we doing this yet? Because we're still waiting on a couple other pieces to align before we can make that funding move or issue orders or whatever it ends up being. And that was hard to understand on the enlisted side. But now as a commander, I understand that there's just so many other things at play, so many other factors that can go into something like that. But the transparency that comes from an open door policy, right? That's what we're trying to achieve with that. Transparency and approachability is still there. It's just sometimes it's frustrating, I think, when airmen don't get the answer that they were looking for when they came in the door.
We just can't know it yet.
Yeah, and
it's just yet.
And believe
forever.
me, internally to a commander, that like wrenches their heart too, because we want to share. We want to give you a solution. We want to resource you. We want to do whatever we can to get you to move forward, to do whatever your goal is. But it is hard sometimes.
Well, I think that leads us to our next question. Are we getting a new base?
We've heard some of the rumors about it, probably some of the rumors that everybody else has heard. I hope so. I don't know the answer to it. I really hope so. I think that will solidify our future for decades to come. Kind of looking at the leadership above me of, what their answer is on that. I hope to hear something soon. I hope that it does, like it just sets the path for us for.
Yeah. Maybe more information to come on that, but we do have a new aircraft coming. So what's the mission with the F-16s?
Yeah, this is awesome. Actually, today, as we're recording this, our first two F-16s will show up today. So
That's awesome.
Personally, this makes me really happy because I came into the Air Force because of the F-16. It was always my favorite plane and got to work on it. So this is really cool that it's shown up. But the mission, that is it's a multi-role fighter. It's very versatile. We have some homeland defense missions that we can do, some presidential support missions that we can do. And then obviously we still are going to have deployments depending on what the combatant commanders need downrange. If the F-16 brings what that needs, then I'm sure we'll get called to go do that. I like the versatility in it. I think that our deployments for the 122nd are going to vary, which I think just adds some excitement to what we do. It's, all of us have deployed in support of everything that happened in the Middle East, over the past 20 years. But those deployments were pretty much cookie cutter, like you knew what you were going to do, especially with the aviation package. You knew what you were going to do. You went and did it, and you came back home. And now I think that there's some variety in that, and some different challenges that we have that's going to make it exciting.
Yeah. I feel like one of the biggest things we've really leaned into, especially at the 122nd, is our multi-capable airmen and the Agile combat employment. It's not just within maintenance. Major Shelton, you kind of alluded a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we've gotten to do some cool things over in LRS. Just last week, I sent 3 people from our POL shop, our fuel shop, to Rhode Island to go get some training with a mobility unit there on how to do wet wing defuels. So, and what that essentially is just taking gas or fuel from a larger aircraft, filtering it, and then putting it into a smaller fighter type of aircraft. In this example, we were using R11s, which is our fuel trucks, and we were filtering the gasoline through, or the fuel through that. And there's some just different tactics and procedures for them to learn through that. And then they will come back, and then we will merge with our maintenance team, our MCA team that we would send out and add to that team, and being able to pick up essentially a group of maintainers and those fuel operators, and be able to be mobile and be more agile. So that whole multi-capable airman, it's doing things that aren't normally your day-to-day. There is some guidelines in that on how far you stray outside of what your main job tasking is. But the main goal is to be agile, be able to move around, be able to move quickly, which is what the fight of tomorrow looks like. And so we're doing things now to prepare our airmen. So in the upcoming years, that they have had some experience in doing something that's a little bit different than their day-to-day.
With getting involved with the base and community, how can we go about finding those opportunities?
The challenge with multi-capable airmen comes down to the level of risk that you can or are willing to accept. And that's the challenge, is balancing those opportunities and those places we could learn and do better with the risks that are associated with possibly putting somebody who may be new to it in that job, or in a location that's not as conducive to conducting it. So balancing that has kind of been, the hallmark, at least at the leadership level, of where that responsibility gets challenged. So as far as the airmen, they have a whole new task that they may have to learn. It may be something that they've never even seen before that they now
once on YouTube.
And, hopefully not on YouTube for some of it.
I get very excited about this because it's an opportunity for our talented folks to shine. I think at the basis, MCA and the ACE concept is empowerment and decision making at the lowest levels, which is amazing. And that excites me, because I think that our NCOs, our airmen that are part of these, people that may not be up in the strategic decision making thing, tiers or whatever, that this, every time we do an exercise and every time we prepare for this, and even when we go and we execute this downrange, the empowerment and the successes that I know are going to come from it are going to be because of the decisions made by the people on the ground in the right time, doing the right things. So as commanders, we have to prepare them with training and resources and multiple exercises to get them ready. But we also have to encourage and empower them to make a decision. That's where it falls back on intent. And I think that even in a deployed environment, the commander there is going to have an intent. I need you to go execute this. And there's not going to be a lot of questions asked. And I like that. I like that room for our airmen to be able to make decisions and innovate and do whatever it takes to get that intent met and come back home.
Yeah, and I think that, we want them to be able to do that, and how they get that is they need confidence. And the only way for them to get confidence is to have those experiences and fostering those experiences and those training for them. I think my squadron's so sick of hearing me talk about training every single drill weekend. But all of us have worked through, you go to basic training and you don't know anything about the Air Force, and now we're very confident and could tell anybody about the Air Force, or maybe when you first joined. It's the same thing with your skills training. So doing these different type of MCA engagements and, ACE type of things, it builds that confidence for them.
And it might feel like checking a box. However, when that opportunity arises, you get to actually do the mission too. And I think that's really cool.
It's going to really transform the way, especially the Air Force in general, operates over the next 15 years. The Air Force we know today is going to be entirely different because Airman so-and-so, who is not really involved in that decision making right now, is going to get a lot more freedom to go out and do their job that we know they know how to do. They're going to get that freedom to make those decisions and do it in the best, most efficient way possible as time goes on. And it's really going to be awesome, in my opinion, to see what that brings, because I think we'll find so many things that we just didn't even know existed. So we're working there to process. That's the only problem. You got to get through the first hurdle to get to the last one. So.
With you saying that, Major Bohachi, what does our base look like with a conversion and really implementing ACE and MCA?
ACE is going to be not new. If you look back in, the examples of a World War II, where you have a unit who's completely cut off and their goal is to operate and achieve their mission. How do they do that? Do they rely on the people that are with them and the skills that they bring to the table? And that may not be their job. That may be, so-and-so works in the medical field and somebody got hurt and the doctor's not with us anymore because his parachute sent him forever far away. So who takes care of that? So now you have this, what really is a multi-capable airman, maybe not in the sense that we're talking right now, that can get that mission to completion. And you're going to just see more and more of that at lower and lower levels, to a point. And it's really going to drive innovation in a way that we just haven't even reached.
It sounds like we just gave it a title. It sounds like something we're already doing. We've just thoroughly defined it and given it a title and some freedom to maneuver in it. So what qualities are you looking for in airmen, and how do you empower their supervisors?
I think we talk a lot, especially with young airmen, about decision making, right? Don't take that 30% car loan. But that translates as you mature and get older into making decisions based on other things and more factors. And especially when you get into the NCO ranks, now, there's a lot of actual responsibilities that are listed out there in regulation, but also just in life. We have responsibilities of just them doing the right thing and being good people. And those are written out there, but those things are just going to drive better and better decision making throughout all levels of the force
More
as
practice.
people move up. Yeah, it's practice. We talked about failing earlier. Fail upward, fail forward is a big thing, and I think it's going to be more and more prevalent as time goes on. So with that better decision making comes less severe failures, and you do it with the intent that you thought it through, you wanted to do the right thing, and maybe the outcome just didn't work out. Doesn't mean anything terrible happened. It just means maybe that airplane didn't fly that day. Hopefully that wasn't a huge problem, but that's why we do it back home. So when we go downrange, like they have that experience, they have that knowledge to prevent that when it matters.
And we're doing all this in 16 hours. So can you guys kind of go over how the full-time resources and allocations are decided? We're already busy. I think it's turned into syndrome, but we're already so busy. How can we cover all these needs and these extra pressures and things as commanders are being asked more of, and then in turn, you all are asking more of us?
I think the reality is you can't do everything. And I think that, one of the things I think that they are trying to push within the culture of the Air Force, which, is met with some resistance, but maybe getting embraced a little bit, is identifying things that we just acknowledge we're not going to do. Whether it's, hey, we're going to waive this, or we're going to say, hey, look, this is just a program we're not going to touch, because otherwise, it's going to have detrimental impacts to the rest of the mission. Looking at a 16-hour drill weekend, it is hard to figure out, how do you get all of those things done to get them MCA trained, make sure they're doing their core tasks, looking at all those different areas. I know within our squadron, we're looking at blocking out like a set amount of hours every drill weekend that are untouched. We're not going to... It's all focused on training. We're not going to do any extra additional CBTs or appointments or things during that. That is core training task accomplishment to give that time back to airmen and supervisors to be able to do that. Your question about where manpower gets decided, I think it's a little bit different. If you're looking at where we're putting manpower at, when you look at how the Air Force decides, or the Air National Guard decides how we get manpower, we're not funded at 100%. So, we have a manning document, you have a part-time manning document, but you also have a full-time manning document. And the full-time manning document's only, if you're lucky, is only, staffed to like 80-85%. Like that's if you're lucky. Some Guard units are less than that. So that's where it gets back to deciding, like, what are you going to do? You can't do everything because you're not properly manned. Smart people have done manpower studies and said, hey, if you have 20 F-16s, this is how many crew chiefs you need. This is how many age people you need. This is how many personnelists you need and how many services people. But guess what? We're not going to pay for all of it. So you as commanders have to make smart decisions and say, where will you feel the pain the most? You should probably put your manpower there, and then figure out what things you want to take risk on. And it's hard because sometimes that makes, it's a balancing act. So you got to figure out, what's most important. And I would say the things that, for me, when I'm looking at what's most important, is obviously mission accomplishment. So we're looking at that, and then we're looking at, taking care of our airmen. We're not going to stress out one area to the point that, they all want to quit because they're working too many hours in a week or on a drill weekend. And then what makes sense for down the road.
I like that. It sounds like intentional development. Like it's not, you have to say no to something. Like I can't lie, I saw flu shot wrote on your hand. I was like, I need my flu shot. But at some point I can get it next month, or maybe my boss will just waive it. Just kidding.
No, I think with that, we're in a very interesting place with the maintenance group and even with the ops group in a conversion, right? It amazes me. It's amazed me my entire career how much an Air National Guardsman, and especially a Blacksnake, can get done in such a short amount of time. It's like one of our superpowers and probably also one of our faults in the sense that they don't fund us fully, but yet we still get the mission done. But now with this conversion, now we're going to be asking our DSG team to get core task qualified on a brand new aircraft that most of them have never seen or touched before. And so how do we do that? We get creative. We have the opportunity to do alternate drills. We have the opportunity to sit down an aircraft on an alternate drill and use it as a maintenance trainer. The shop supervisors all know they have that power, and all they got to do is ask, and we can make those things happen so we can meet the mission. There is flexibility in some of the tools we have, but then I would also ask the airmen, get creative with it. Maybe it's something that we haven't seen. I just found out at our strategic planning conference that there's a unit out west that does three-day drills back to back, and then they have a drill off. So they're doing two 3-day drills quarterly. Well, what they found with that was the Fridays, the DSGs came in, got all their admin stuff done, their CBTs, getting logged into the computer and all that stuff. And Friday was dedicated to that, but then it opened up opportunities for Saturday and Sunday to focus on AFSC training or, MCA or whatever it ended up being. So it's interesting. That's an interesting change that is not the norm across. I would ask our airmen to bring those new ideas to us so that maybe there's something that we don't see as commanders that they see could be more impactful for the hours that they get out here.
It's a challenge. I know, going to your employer and saying, hey, I'm going to be gone for 6 days instead of 2 seems hard, and it's hard for your employer. And in certain scenarios with, if you run your own business or you just have a couple people, like it can be a pretty big hit. I get that, and I've definitely lived that on my career throughout that. So it can be a challenge, but there can be payback. So consider that stuff, because now you have those other 2.5 months that you're not there. So
it's definitely a
creative.
trade-off. Our airmen keep surprising us, our Black Snakes, and everything we're able to accomplish and get done in a drill period and then some more. What are some great things that your airmen are specifically doing lately? Hint, hint, if you want to give a shout out to anyone.
I absolutely love our AFREP team, which is our Air Force Repair Enhancement Program. This program, while it existed in the Air Force, our airmen grabbed a hold of it, started researching it, figuring it out, and their willingness. It's interesting because this program, one, helps enhance the repair network for big Air Force to have some of these difficult parts for A-10s, F-16s, whatever airframe. It helps get them back in service much quicker. But because sometimes the contracting repairs that may happen out in the civilian world are done just differently, and it takes slower time. So it returns parts to our supply system much faster. But then the other benefit of it is that we get credits back to the base on what we saved the Air Force money on with those repairs. And with that, we've been able to fund many more things that we would have lost in the past couple of years. Our program's going on its 3rd year. It's done extremely well. And continuing to do that, and then that's now providing commanders across the wing with more resources to provide more opportunities for the airmen. So, my shout out, just off the top of my head, was the AFREP program. The team there has done an amazing job, and if you don't know it, they have an impact in your area in one way or another.
Yeah.
He's staring at me through this whole podcast because LRS is one of the benefactors of the AFREP. I have a couple of airmen that are a key part of that process with them. So my material flight and my TMO shop work hand in hand with maintenance on working through that AFREP. Using some of the benefits of that, I want to give a shout out to my VM team. There's lots of teams or lots of people I could give a shout out to in LRS, but I would say the vehicle management flight, using those AFREP funds and under the leadership of Chief Scheinman, Sergeant Gillespie, and Sergeant Bonner have just really turned that flight around. The fact that they've consistently kept the fleet at a 90% or better month over month has been outstanding. And when they are compared against other flights within the Air National Guard, just the things that they've been able to do in this past year or so, they really are setting a standard, and they're really trying to revitalize a shot that had really lacked in attention, and not necessarily from their own doing, but just in funds and being able to get training for all their airmen. So just super impressed with them. It's really nice and reassuring. And sometimes we take for granted the fact that we have vehicles that work out here. We have equipment that works. We're able to go and, plow the streets and do things like that everyone else uses, all the stuff that they do. And that's because of those awesome mechanics getting in there and turning all those wrenches. And now they got some really nice new fancy equipment thanks to Major Pence's team over there in maintenance. So.
Yeah, just first off, we in MOF appreciate you guys getting us money, so just go with that. But MOF is a unique place because it's very behind the scenes, but it affects the entire maintenance group, and the people that work in there with me and for me are honestly some of the best in the Air National Guard and the Air Force, and people are calling them all the time. I would literally have to call out every single shop because they all have Air Force wide relationships that people reach out to them for advice and, how do we do about this and grow things. And it's really remarkable, like how good they all are at their job specifically.
Define the MOF flight.
So we have engine management, the maintenance operations center, or MOC, plans and scheduling. And so let me break that down real quick. So the maintenance operations center controls kind of and documents actions that happen on the flight line and with maintenance in general. So creating job numbers, tracking aircraft movements like within the flight line is kind of their role. They also run checklists for various scenarios that take place on base, whether that be routine or emergency. Plans and scheduling and engine management kind of perform similar functions, but obviously engine management does it specifically with the engines that are tracked on their own. And plans and scheduling does it with the airframe. So they're in charge of, any type of planning out that scheduled maintenance, keeping track of documentation, and kind of making sure everybody knows what's coming with that. And we have the training office. So they, with this conversion specifically, have organized all of that task qualification training that we've talked about for all 400 plus members of the maintenance group at this point. So they've done a ton of work. There's 2 people in there, and they are on top of it like you wouldn't believe. It makes my life super easy. In the analysis section, they do data analysis. So anything from, hey, how do we identify, this trend? Like, hey, I think this makes sense with this number. Like, does it actually? And they'll go in there and pull the numbers and come up with a really fancy PowerPoint because they're really good at it.
Yeah.
So, and then you also have your unit deployment managers who manage all the deployment training and reporting and getting people ready to go out the door when it's time. So
Small but mighty.
we like to think so.
Yeah. So with you 3 today, if you guys could share one thing about yourself that maybe your squadrons in flight don't know, since you just had some shout outs yourself.
I guess one thing about me, whether or not people know or not, I'm a mama twin, so I got 2 little boys. They're really not little; they're the same height as me or bigger. And I also have a daughter that's 10. But I feel like being a mama twins has prepared me well for multitasking and this commander role. Because when you think all is going well, they're like, I used to call them my tiny pterodactyls, and because they worked in pairs, and what one didn't think of, the other one did. And so I felt like it was a really good commander preparation. So I highly recommend having twins if you ever have aspiration of being a commander, because they have definitely tested my patience, my skills as a parent, and as an adult. So, but they're good boys. They're turning out well. Good 8th graders, so proud of them.
I think for me, I never would have thought this, but I think if I wasn't here in the military, I would be a teacher. I've been involved in my children's school quite often. I like to teach junior achievement. We do some mentor stuff through our church in the school. I'm always volunteering for field trips. I feel like I'm the single dad out there, which I'm not, but I feel like I'm the dad out there with all the moms. But I just love being involved with it, and then teaching Sunday school. I never realized that I had a passion for it until I got around the kids when my children started going through school. So maybe in my next career, I'll try elementary education.
And I guess it's a new plan, so I guess I'm thinking about starting a hay farm. So
Hay farm?
Yeah. I got to buy a lot of equipment just to maintain the property, and I figured maybe this would help pay for it. So
very cool.
I'm sure it will be. There's a lot of steps to come.
Yeah. So our commanders are people too, huh? You guys are at some point just like us. And so in closing, what advice would you give someone looking to get out or just looking to join, just in general? From your prior enlisted experience and now officer experience, you guys get both sides of the coin. So what is some advice that you would give someone?
I think if you're looking to join the unit, I would say my experience has been that you will get so much more out of serving out here, especially at the 122nd, than you ever expected to receive. I've been blessed throughout my career to have so many really cool opportunities to go different places. I've met so many people, I've made so many good friends all around the world. And that's not something you expect. When I joined, I was 17 and I was just looking for a way to pay for college. Thought this would be fun to do for 6 years, something, different. And here I am 22 years later, still in, and, and traveled all around the world. And, it still gives me every day. I feel very lucky to work out here. I feel very lucky for all the friendships I've made over the years, and all the life lessons. And I feel like it's made me a better person overall by being out here. So if you're looking to join, and you like travel and teamwork and friendships and growing and all those type of things, you would find that here.
And training with you, ma'am.
And training with me, because I love training.
That's right.
I say ditto on that for everything that she said. This place is a family, and it's amazing. I'd gear my advice more towards those that are in. And what do you want to do with your career? And I go back to what I talked about. Don't be afraid to take risk, to make a change, to try a different AFSC, to try a different path. I think that there are many opportunities out here that we have really good airmen that maybe just don't want to take the jump to retraining in an AFSC or signing up for a deployment or doing something like that. And I would tell you, don't be afraid to take the risk. They're very rarely out here will that backfire on you. So take the risk, try something new, talk to people about it. Don't do it in a bubble. Talk to people about it, because there are people out here that have changed. I think Major Shelton stole like 5 or 6 people from the maintenance group when she was in the Force Support Squadron.
Yeah.
but
How many jobs have you had?
yeah, but now they're over there and doing amazing things for the rest of the base, and so don't be afraid to take that risk, whether it's a different change in your enlisted career or to jump to the officer side. Do it.
Yeah.
And run with it.
I think you'll be surprised too, the you meet on the other side. And that's always been most exciting when you get to show up for yourself like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Major Bohatchee.
Yeah, so my story, I've been at DSG my entire career, and it's allowed me to do a lot of things and have a civilian career. And there are definite unique challenges to that. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat that at all. Like, it can be tough, but so can everything. I enlisted when I was 17. I got to my 6-year point, and honestly, I was ready to pull chocks and go do whatever else. I just wasn't feeling it, but they were offering a 1-year enlistment, and didn't really have a job lined up. Like, I had some ideas, so I was like, I'll just stick it out, whatever. And here I am, like,
The
getting ready
non-committal.
to finish my 20th year. So there's kind of 4 things that have always stuck with me, like, about the military, just that I've heard kind of throughout time. One being that, if you're in a bad situation, the military is basically a guaranteed way out. If you come and you put in the work and you do well, like, the retirement and the end result will almost always put you in a good place. So that is a huge opportunity for people that want to come in that maybe don't know where they want to go yet, or they don't know what opportunities are out there. So that opportunity is there to have a life later on, and also do the things like Major Shelton said, make friends, meet challenges. And that kind of leads me to the other thing. If you meet someone else that's also in the military, it's actually super funny as you get older to realize, like, just how easy it is to connect with them, because you all have this shared experience, and that's something extremely unique to the military that really doesn't exist in a lot of places, and not even to the extent, like, they talk about firefighting being very close-knit and all that, and that does exist to a point, but it is not nearly at the same level that I've experienced in the military. So Major Pence talked about taking those risks. Colonel Wagner used to basically always tell us, do the thing that's going to be uncomfortable, because, like you said, you'll be surprised what comes out on the other side. It's worth it to take that risk. Talk to people, make sure you know what the consequences are, but do it. Get out there, live a little, like, see what happens, and you'll be surprised how well you do. The last thing is kind of always stuck with me, and I honestly forget who said it, and it always bugs me that I forget this, but the best day to start something was always yesterday, but the second best day is always today. It's really hard to make changes, but just know that you got to start at some point and just go with it. So it's not worth being hard on yourself about what you didn't do yesterday. Just take that step and move forward.
Thank you for that. That was all of you. That was really good and enlightening. And I think just reiterates our commanders are people too, and they're doing the best job with their charge. So with that, Airmen that graciously let me reach out to them, thank you for your questions. I hope I did you justice in asking them. And commanders, thank you too for effort, your time, and all your insight in leading us today. Blacksnakes, share the show. We want this to be the fastest growing military podcast out there, and we can't do that without your help. Until next time, see you out there.